for those of you tuning in now, for those of you watching this episode when it's done completely, you probably won't notice much of the difference from anything. But for those of you who were watching live earlier today, yeah, about that. So, right about, anybody tune in for the first part of this episode, watch it live earlier, got to see me talk about, I did the review of S4, the Bob Lazar video, and the review of the American Sasquatch video as well. And I was about to get into the Jeremy Corbell, I don't know if it's a documentary or a biopic or something like that. And had lots of problems with my dogs who are still here, but kind of. Hey, Ray, what's up, man? Yeah. So Ray's coming in here. Had all sorts of problems with the dogs, and then we're having this weird weather out in California, and we just had love you too, Ray. Just going to throw that out there to you. My main man Ray, who's the hardest working one tired brother, as he likes to call himself on the chair shot. But anyway, the dogs they were going crazy because there were people outside. We have this weird weather. There was all this technical problems. I couldn't get something to play. And I just ended the stream abruptly out of like frustration and just like, I don't know what's going on. So we're going to pick things up from where that was and where I was at that point. And also, in the downtime, I found out a few other things. Some new news broke loose a little bit here and there. Also, for the first time ever, I'm streaming an episode on Facebook, on the Attitude of Regression's Facebook page, which I've never really done before and never even really thought about it until today when I was watching, my friend Pavel Ibarra from the Psychoactivo podcast. He was doing, I was watching one of his episodes, and he started doing these live episodes about a month ago. And I've seen his page on Facebook, and I've seen stuff that it's like, wow, is he broadcasting live through Facebook? Sure enough, he's broadcasting live through Facebook. So I'm like, I wonder if I can do that too. And sure enough, Riverside rules the world again. I was able to connect to my Facebook page, or at least I think I am. And I'll have to go and check that out. And let's, just kind of like jump in there and see what's happening. Actually, there we go. There is a live broadcast. And, well, I won't listen to that because that's just going to cause problems. But anyway, for the first time ever, anybody watching on Facebook, Attitude of Aggression, this is, for those of you who don't know on Facebook, because it hasn't really been advertised there, Unidentified History is kind of a offshoot of the Attitude of Aggression Wrestling podcast, where we're not talking pro wrestling. We're talking about UFOs, UAPs, and predominantly it's a historical deep dive on a lot of these UFO and UAP cases throughout history. And we've covered quite a few of them, but we also delve into current events and some of the conventions that have been going on and that sort of thing. And today's episode, at least the first part, was dealing with a review of the Bob Lazar documentary S4 by Luigi Ventitelli. And as I said, while during the downtime in between the episodes, I saw Andy McGrillen from That UFO Podcast. He put out an episode with Luigi where Luigi kind of indicated that he didn't think Bob was lying, but that Bob may have omitted certain things from the conversation. And that, that's kind of interesting to hear and that sort of thing. So that's what's going on there. And of course, I also did the review of American Sasquatch, another documentary that came out, which I thought was very well done. And in between all this stuff going on, like my nephew-in-law, he comes over to the house, and him and my wife and my niece, they went out to dinner, and I get stuck watching the dog. Well, I volunteer to watch the dogs. And he was saying that he was listening in on the live stream on YouTube and listening in about the S4 and American Sasquatch. And my nephew-in-law is the biggest skeptic in the world. He doesn't believe in anything. So he doesn't buy any of the shit that I talked about, but he thought it was interesting all the same. So that's cool. So anyway, picking back up where we left off, I want to start jumping in here by talking about or showing the trailer for the Jeremy Corbell, I guess it's a documentary. It's something called Sleeping Dog. And this is kind of where the first half of this broadcast broke apart when I tried to show this trailer. I don't think it's going to happen here. I think you'll be able, and I think it actually like played on the first part. It just, I'm going to redo it here because it's not going to show up on the final broadcast properly. But anyway, let's take a look at this trailer for This upcoming film is coming out on May 12th, 2026. Jeremy Corbell, I think it's a documentary. We're going to call it a documentary. This is the trailer for Sleeping Dog. So let's get into this thing here.
Your journalistic credentials mean jack shit. If you look in the 70s and 80s with the CIA, they used to have reporters on their payroll. They don't respect anybody.
Corbell is an investigative journalist who helped obtain and release the DoD footage of UFOs.
I've been holding a secret for about 11 years, and it's going to be extremely public. It's not a video of an alien. It's not a video of one craft. It's more than that. Years ago, I went searching for the truth about UFOs, and I found it.
He was the most curious kid ever.
The first person that I pointed a camera at was John Lear.
John Lear, son of the famed aviation pioneer, the world-class pilot.
The government has between 30 and 50 alien bodies.
Cold called his phone, and he picked up. I want to bring a camera, and then how open he was with me.
This was not part of my game plan at all.
Flying saucers, flying discs of extraterrestrial origin.
The evidence is very strong. They've been here and are here.
It's an Alice in Wonderland planet. Very few people will ever find the truth, but everybody is looking for the truth, and a lot of people think that they found the truth, but that's impossible.
I'm like the least qualified person on planet Earth. One thing I am is I am worthy of your trust.
If you really have stuff that is that sensitive that you cannot release, you're relying on your connection as a journalist. They're not going to come after you, not only you, they're going to come after your family. If I die, this story comes out.
It would represent one of the largest leaks in American history. I don't know what to do, man. Is it worth it? To who?
So yeah, there you go, man. That is the trailer for Sleeping Dog coming out May 12th, 2026. It does look like it is a Jeremy Corbell video, or at least a documentary of some sort of biopic. And I think I mentioned right before the stream cut off on the other one that a few interesting things about that you get to see some of Jeremy's background, his martial arts training, that sort of thing. Jeremy catches a lot of shit, man. He really catches a lot of shit from a lot of people that I don't think is justified. And I mean, I get some of the criticism, but a lot of it I don't get, because Jeremy's he's trying, and he's been doing this stuff, and he's been out on the front lines, beating the bushes, all that stuff. Him and George Knapp have been disclosing videos for quite some time. And, this looks really interesting. I think one of the big things I took away from that, there's a scene near the end where he's got the cell phone and it's no caller ID. That voice on the other line should be very familiar to a lot of us, because that's Dylan Borland. And Dylan is on there talking about how if he dies, the whole story comes out. So I can't help but wonder, is Sleeping Dog, is this a documentary or a movie about kind of that? Is there going to be a bigger disclosure in here? Jeremy, most of us think that he knows more than he lets on. And I think that's a pretty commonly held belief amongst a lot of people in the UFO community, that he knows more than he's letting on. So we'll see. I think they're going to do a screening of this at Contact in the Desert. That's coming up in a few weeks. I will be there. I don't know if I'll go and watch it there, because I'll probably watch it before I even get to Contact. And there's so much shit going on at Contact. We'll talk about that in a little while. But, to Jeremy's credit, I said earlier, I think it was on the first part of this episode before the stream got weirded out and we had to take the few-hour break, that they had the what was it, the science symposium or the space symposium or something like that today. And he had we had got David Grush on Weaponized for like the first time in a very long time. And I think I'm going to try and play, UAP James had clipped this thing out of here, and I'm going to try and see if I can't share this, because Grush had some really interesting comments. Let's see if I can't share the screen. Yeah. Let's see if I can't play this so that you can hear what Grush had to say here. Here we go. This is UAP James clipped this from the weaponized broadcast earlier today. This is David Grush saying some very interesting things about what's happening with Trump's possible disclosure. And of course, as we're recording this or broadcasting this over in DC, all hell's breaking loose. Shooter taken down apparently at a ballroom dinner. Somebody was trying to kill Donald Trump or shoot at the president, or I'm not sure about this though.
Here's truly anomalous signatures in the skies. The U.S. government understands it represents a form of sentient, non-human intelligence. I know that sounds very Star Trek, a la Gene Roddenberry and Rod's dad's sci-fi series, but it is true. And I want the American public to be comforted that the universe is teeming with life, it seems, and readily able to be explored. And the U.S. government does have a lot of information that I think will inspire Gen Alpha and Gen Z and the American populace at large. And it will be a new era. It'll be a little uncomfortable. There'll be some truths that are be a hard pill to swallow, but I think it's ultimately a good thing to get this out there. And I think the people of the world and the American public will be very happy to understand their place in the universe, so to speak. Yours truly.
So what he said there was, oh, Mike's in here, man. What's up, Mike? Yeah, I messaged Mike earlier on this when I was going to do the stream earlier. And Mike, if you're coming in late, yeah, the first stream we got about 45 minutes in and all hell's kind of broke loose. And technical problems abounded, dog problems abounded, and I had to cut the stream. So now I'm coming back to finish this up. So what's up, Mike? Good to see you in here as always, my friend. So yeah, Grush, and also in on during that thing, UAP James has got something else. And I guess, yeah, shit, we might as well just play it because I mean, we're here, right? We're here. We might as well play what he has to say here too. So let's go ahead and do that as well and hear what Grush has to say.
I certainly have advised the administration over the last year or so. I spent a lot of time with high-level officials working for the president to try to provide my sage advice on it, and I'll leave that at that just to keep confidences in some of my sensitive conversations. But I hope for the best. That I think there's a high expectation for the president to deliver, and I think if he does reveal everything that I came in contact with, he's going to go down in history as a great figure historically, regardless of your political persuasion and personal opinion of the president. I certainly have.
So yeah, lots of stuff going on there with David Grush. And I mean, he didn't talk long. He maybe, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, something like that on that episode. But anytime Grush comes out there and talks, it gets people talking, for lack of a better term. They start listening to what he has to say and kind of curious as to, okay, well, what's Dave talking about? What's going on here? It's real interesting. He's talking about there's stuff in the sky that it is not anything that we know about, that if the president disclosed what he knows, people are going to have a reckoning. People are going to have to deal with that. So, all this stuff is going on right now. I mean, there's so much news. It just, I urge people, follow people like Pavel, follow like, that UFO podcast. They're excellent, great news sources and far more on top of it than I am. I mean, for those of you wondering, am I back on X? Not really. I could still access a few things, and I figured out ways to kind of get around it there in my suspended state. And I can still obviously share screens and that sort of thing. So no, they have not reinstated my account, but yes, I can still do some fun stuff and kind of getting David Grush's take from the symposium earlier today. Go check out the Weaponized live stream when that I watched it as it was happening earlier. I'm sure they'll have the full episode coming out a little bit later on, but let's kind of shift into what was going to be the back half of this episode. And the big topic of conversation right now, and I mean, and this is just something that keeps on evolving as we go along, is the story of the missing and dead scientists. And it is such a hot button topic, and everybody's looking into it. The FBI is allegedly looking into it, and the president has made comments about this. Is there a connection? Is there not a connection? So what I want to do is kind of like go through, and I know other podcasts have done this. I heard one of them, Theories of the Third Kind or something like that. They did kind of a similar sort of thing in a little bit more detail than I'm going to go into. But I want to go into some of this stuff and then tie in a few other things along the way. So if I can find it, here we go. So I did this and I wanted to kind of get, and the inquiry that I had, there's been an enormous amount of discussion about 10 to 12 scientists, personalities that have gone missing or died under mysterious circumstances lately. We've talked about Amy Eskridge. Pavel did a live show with Courtney Marcassani, I think is her name, just the other day, talking about Amy Eskridge. We, of course, know about General McCaslin. And now what really triggered this stuff this week is the suicide of David Wilcock. And even my wife was the one who first told me about, what had happened with David Wilcock. And she writes that in there. And it didn't register with me at first. I'm like, why does that name sound so familiar? And it's another UAP personality. So, of course, the question is there any real connection between this? So let's kind of go through what we know about. And I've got, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 listed, and I think there's even more. There's probably a 13th or 14th, but let's kind of go through the ones that we know about, and then I'll tie in. There's some video that I want to do, a News Nation clip, and then there's a News Nation article that I got it on my phone that I'll read aspects of it. It's all very disturbing. There's no other way to describe it other than very disturbing. Does that mean it's all connected? Is this all nefarious? I don't know. But let's go through this together and kind of see what we can kind of piece along here. So the cases that obviously have the stronger, more direct UAP, UFO adjacent ties. Out of the people who we're going to talk about, there's 3 that really come to mind. Of course, David Wilcock. We talked about that the other day. Author, YouTuber, disclosure movement figure. He's a prominent public voice in the UFO disclosure movement, appeared regularly in that space. He was declared deceased through the Boulder County Coroner's Office, confirmed he died by suicide on April 20th, 2026. Now, this got a lot of attention because just a couple of years ago, he said that he wasn't suicidal at all. You hear people like Eric Burleson say that. Representative Burchett will say that they're not suicidal. This seems to be a waving the flag. Hey, I'm not suicidal, so if something happens to me, you should look into this a little bit more detailed. But David Wilcock was one of these ones, and he posted just a couple days earlier that, not to the effect that he wasn't suicidal, but that it called into question for this. So this I do want to share, though, because, where is it? Hold on. Anyway, I'll keep talking. So I got to find, because Joe Mergia, UFO Joe, had posted something the other day when the David Wilcock story broke. And he kind of laid out the chronology of what was going on and tried to get away from some of the more sensationalistic aspects of things that were going on with his suicide. So, and I'm trying to find it. I had this. Okay, where is this page? Okay, so yeah, here we go. Let me get this up here. I will share Joe's page here, and I'll put a link to this as well. But let me get Joe Mergia's. Okay, there we go. So hopefully you guys can see this. This was right after it happened, and Joe had outlined for this kind of what was going on over in Boulder County, the death investigation near Ridge Road. These are the details of this. Boulder County Communications received a 911 call at approximately 10:44 a.m. Monday, April 20th, 2026, regarding an unknown problem near the 1400 block Ridge Road, northeast of the town of Nederland. The emergency communication specialist who took the call suspected the caller was experiencing a mental health crisis. Deputies arrived at approximately 11:02 a.m., made contact with a male outside a residence who was holding a weapon. Within minutes of deputies' arrival, he used the weapon on himself and was pronounced deceased at the scene. Deputies searched the residence and surrounding property, did not locate any other individuals. There's no known threat to the public. Detectives with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office responded and are conducting a joint investigation with the Boulder County Coroner's Office. So to get this really kind of outlines what was going on with David Wilcock at the time, and does certainly seem to suggest strongly that this is a suicide. This was not a homicide. What may or may not have driven him to do that, that's a different story. That's something up to debate. But the notion that he was offed by somebody else or unalived by somebody else, as the politically correct terminology is not really supported based on the official reports coming out in Boulder County. Now, could the cops have been lying about that? Sure, but it doesn't seem to be that way. So that's one of the big things that came out. Then, of course, we've got General William Neal McCaslin. We know about a retired U.S. Air Force Major General, former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. UFO, UAP type. Publicly, this whole thing's limited and disputed. Most of us who follow this think like, well, we know he's tied into Wright-Patterson. We know he was heavily involved with Tom DeLonge. John Podesta, I think, talked about him. However, his wife, who of course has her own issues with this whole thing, said that he had only a brief association with the UFO community. She pushed back on claims that he had any special UAP alien-related knowledge. He's been missing since February 27th. CBS reported investigations uncovered no evidence of foul play at the time, that I put all this stuff together. So, I mean, I appreciate it, Mike. What did I say that you agree with? I'm like, I said a few things there. I wonder what it could be. But the thing I know about David Wilcock, yeah, I mean, you can look at that a certain way, but when you're looking at official police reports and things like that are coming in, and they're on the scene and somebody's got a weapon and they're clearly in a state of mental issue, having a mental breakdown, things aren't going right. It does seem to certainly suggest that that's a suicide, and there's no other way about it. McCaslin, that's anybody's guess. We've talked about him on the show before, and part of me really thinks that he is in hiding somewhere, that sort of thing. I'm not sure, because I think if he had just wandered off into the wilderness and died, somebody would have found the body by now. Buzzards, smell, something like that. You would have seen something. I mean, this kind of goes back to the Bigfoot thing in the first part of this episode, in the first stream, where, if they were really biological, you would have found the body by now or something, but you haven't found that. So either he was taken, maybe by an adversary, or he's in hiding, or somebody's got him somewhere. But the McCaslin situation is, of course, a very odd one and a very concerning one. And then there's Amy Eskridge. And of course, this has got a lot of airplay lately. Aerospace anti-gravity researcher, co-founder of the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama. Not a mainstream UFO figure, at least she wasn't, but she's becoming posthumously such a figure. She's frequently discussed in UAP circles because of her reported work on anti-gravity exotic propulsion interests. She just died on June 11th, 2022. It was reported as a self-inflicted gunshot wound, noting that a full public investigative report had not been released. Amy, and there's an article that I've got here that I'll probably link to it, but I'll probably just kind of scroll through this whole thing here and give a little bit on Amy's situation. Yeah, here we go. So with Amy, she was obviously, something was going on with her, and she was very much afraid of a lot of different things. And she's this is a article that we got from the Daily Mail. And when you read through this article that I'm just scrolling through, and I'll put a link to this in the description when the full episode comes out. So she co-founded this institute with her father, Richard Eskridge, in 2018. And she was talking about in this article about her being roofied, people asking how drunk she wanted to get, or how many roofies that she wanted, just blatant stuff. There's a short video that I won't go into here just in the interest of time, that she's talking about people with black vehicles, I don't know if they're Escalades or some sort of SUV across the street from her, interchanging license plates on their car. So you could never figure out, if you wanted to report a license plate, this person was blatantly changing it in front of them like every other day. Ubers were coming with these license plates that had been taken off of one car, come to the back. She was saying in this video that she needed to disclose. And then she walked that disclosure board back and said she needed to publish, which kind of indicates that, okay, how close was she to some sort of breakthrough? Is that what happened? Is that why she was taken out? But when you look at this article, and I'll scroll down, and here's a picture of Amy's hands. That looks like, when you start looking at her hands up here that are discolored, was she hit with a directed energy weapon? And, these guys are talking about a guy named Milburn who looked at her hands and said, this looks like a directed energy attack of some sort. And they were saying, an RF K-band emitter run by 5 car batteries strung together from inside an SUV. That's horrifying to think that somebody could just park outside your house, string something like this together, and hit you with a directed energy attack. It's all just remarkably concerning sort of stuff. But anyway, I would say, go look at that Daily Mail article, because it's a fascinating read. So the Amy Eskridge situation, and her dad is like, this is the part that, like McCaslin's wife kind of downplays things and makes fun of it and says, well, maybe he was taken by the aliens. And then Amy Eskridge's father is like, never suspected, pushed back on anybody saying there was anything suspicious about his daughter's death, saying scientists die too. And it's almost like when you hear what not that I've actually heard what he said, but when you read that, it's almost like, well, either he knew that his daughter had some issues going on, and that he knew that she had some problems, and that this might be a real risk of a suicide, or somebody got to him and he's scared and he's trying to cover for whatever's going on. I don't know. But let's kind of go on to some of the more the people who are also in this strange sort of situations that they don't have any verified public UFO ties per se, but they're involved in the industries and the subsets of the industries that make it seem like, well, maybe there's something here. Michael David Hicks, research scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, worked on asteroid comet research, including Deep Space One and DART-related work. He no verified public UFO role, grouped in the online discussion because of advanced space research. Deceased July 30th, 2023. Newsweek said no public cause of death had been disclosed. We got Frank Mywald, principal researcher, systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. There we go. No verified public UFO role, included because of the JPL sensitive research overlap. He is deceased as of July 4th, 2024, with Newsweek saying there's no public cause of death provided. So right off the bat, you're looking at those two and you're side-eyeing this and raising an eyebrow. Okay. 2 researchers at JPL who both die within roughly a year of each other, and there's no public cause of death. We got Anthony Tony Chavez, former Los Alamos National Laboratory staffer, retired employee, no verified public UFO role, missing since May of 2025. Local and national reporting say he was last seen leaving his Los Alamos home on foot. Who does that sound like? That sounds like Neil McCaslin. He's been gone since May of 2025. Here's another one. Monica Jacinto Reza, aerospace engineer, metallurgist, director of materials processing. Here we go, at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, previously tied to Aerojet Rocketdyne. And again, no verified public UFO role, missing since June 22nd, 2025. She disappeared while hiking in the Angeles National Forest. This is one we've heard about, that she's hiking with somebody who's right next to her, and the next thing, this person turns around and she's gone. She hasn't been seen in nearly a year. It's mind-numbing. Melissa Casillas, administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Library. No verified public UFO role. Her family has said she was not in a classified scientist role. She's been missing since June of 2025. CBS quoted her family saying they had seen no evidence linking her case to others. Really? I'm seeing it right here, looking at this brief little bio. I can see the connection. Stephen Garcia, government contractor, property custodian, tied to the Kansas City National Security Campus operation in Albuquerque. no verified public UFO role, missing since August 2025. CBS has listed him among the New Mexico disappearances. Nuno Lorayo, I don't know. This is a tough one. Yeah, can't pronounce that one. Lorayo. I don't know. Anyway, Nuno was the director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. Now, lately, I've been listening back to the UAP Summit recap that I did, and there's a lot of talk about plasma. And I was watching the Massimo Teodorani. He did a thing with the investigating NHI series that Reed Summers and UAP Med have been doing. He's of course talking about plasma the whole time. So here we got the director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, a plasma fusion physicist. No verified public UFO role, status deceased from December 2025. CBS reported investigators believe he was shot and killed by Claudio Neves Valente, who was also tied to the Brown University shooting. So that one you look at and say, okay, well, the Brown University shooting was kind of a lot of seemingly random things going on, unless it wasn't. And he could have just been wrong place, wrong time sort of situation. Don't know. Carl Grillmeyer, Caltech astrophysicist, worked on NASA-related astronomy missions, including NEOWISE, NEO-Surveyor work. Status, deceased on February 16th, 2026. So this is just barely 2 months ago. CBS reported he was shot to death at his home and that a suspect was charged. What? Yes. Jason Thomas, pharmaceutical researcher associated with Novartis. Of course, again, no verified public UFO role. Status, found deceased in March of 2026 after having been missing since December of 2025. So he's missing for a few months. Then they find him. CBS said his body was recovered from Lake Quannapoit and that authorities said no foul play was suspected at that stage. All right. So with all that being said, and you're looking at this thinking, okay, yes, you don't want to read too much into this. You don't want to jump into the deep end and go off the deep edge, the edge of the cliff here, and just assume that this is all connected. But the fact is that you see how many of them are tied to JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, how many of them are tied to Los Alamos. Some of the other ones, I mean, you could make the argument that, okay, well, Jason Thomas is a pharmaceutical researcher. How does that have anything to do with any of this stuff? Okay. Yeah. That fair point. Caltech astrophysicist, that's sort of getting in there. But when you talk about people who are, director of MIT's Plasma Science Center, all this other stuff going on, it is hard to look at this and say, yeah, there's nothing here. Is it all related? Probably not. Is some of it related? It sure seems that way. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And it is a very, very strange situation. So I'm going to pull this up because this article came out earlier today. And, if I can find it here, where is it? It's a News Nation piece that came out. Where are you? There you are. Anyway, they were talking about a UAP witness who had died like literally just weeks before. And I'm trying to find this thing. This whole thing's been coming out. So he was David, a good close friend of David Grush. And they were supposed to meet and get together. Yeah, I mean, some people are talking about there's no conspiracy with this. Some cases are suspicious. I know Marco Van Rennenkamp, or excuse me, Merrick Van Rennenkamp has been looking into this sort of stuff. And it gets very, very suspect is the best way to look at this thing. But anyway, I thought I had this article and now I just can't find it. So hold on. I'm going to give it one last try and then we will move on because who needs to just sit here and watch me fumble around on my phone, right? I agree. Okay, here we go. I found it. UAP witness died of overdose before meeting with Congress. So this is a report. And more details are emerging about the death of Matthew James Sullivan. He was not one of the ones I listed earlier. Former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer who died in 2024, shortly before he was expected to talk with federal lawmakers about unidentified anomalous phenomena. Sullivan was 39 and a good friend of David Grush's. Died at Falls Church, Virginia. This is where I grew up, Falls Church, Virginia, of an accidental drug overdose from multiple medications. The New York Post had reported Saturday, citing records from the state's Northern District Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. Among the substances reportedly found in Sullivan's system were Xanax, cyclobenzaprine, and alcohol. Never a good mix. That's for sure. At the time of his death on May 12, 2024, Sullivan had been scheduled to be interviewed by lawmakers in the coming weeks. Burleson was talking about this. So again, now and this is Merrick von Rennenkamp has been doing a lot of work on the Sullivan death case. So again, he's not a scientist, and there's no direct link to any of the other ones that we talked about. But again, it's another very strange and disturbing circumstance involving these folks. And, you tie back to the Jeremy Corbell, the sleeping dog trailer that we watched earlier. And, what he's going to leak. Dylan Borland being on the phone, clearly saying if he dies, this all comes out. And now that part, I firmly think, is all connected. But, it is so hard and difficult. And even like, Merrick is talking about, look, I don't think there's a conspiracy here, but there certainly is a lot going on. And a lot of this stuff is very suspicious. So I want to go to, actually, this is something I got from News Nation. I think this was last night. And it's an interview that Chris Como does with Lou Elizondo. And they're talking about some of the stuff involving these dead scientists and the missing scientists and that sort of thing. And Lou is, of course, he's recovering from his, his motorcycle accident and that sort of thing. And he looks fine. He looks pretty good in this whole thing. But let's watch this. And this rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper and darker, to be quite honest with you guys. So let's take a look at this interview with Chris Cuomo and Lou Elizondo. And it is certainly eye-opening, to say the least. So let's check this out.
What are we getting wrong about this? Why should we keep looking at it?
Well, look, anytime you have experts in the national security arena either disappearing or in some cases dying prematurely and not necessarily a natural way, we have to look at this very closely. We can go back even to the 1940s during the Manhattan Project, when we knew Russia was trying to target a lot of our scientists and try to learn some of our atomic secrets. This is nothing new. What is new, though, is that we have these scientists, these engineers, and senior military officials that are completely unaccounted for. Some of these individuals had very high security clearances, top secret SCI security clearances. Anytime that would happen in any other country, Russia, China, obviously would be a problem. This is happening here in the United States. And there are some very interesting common ties that at least some of these individuals have with one another. And that is the UAP topic, ironically enough.
So, and you say this isn't you referring to culture or history. You're saying you talked to some of these people and what happened doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. In fact, several of the people that you have on your list right there that you showed, I personally spoke with years ago and talked to myself. And it was about the UAP topic and their work in that arena. But there's also, you said something, and it's absolutely accurate. There's other individuals that are not on that list that I am personally aware of that might actually be associated with it. There is an individual that somebody Chris Mellon, who's been on your show before, was going to talk to about 2.5, 3 years ago. He was a few days away from meeting this individual. He was an engineer, apparently on the legacy U.S. government's legacy UAP effort, and mysteriously died right before the meeting. There's another individual whom I spoke with. He reached out to me. I'm going to protect his identity here for the sake of his family, but he did meet an untimely end. He was a senior special agent at the Department of Energy, and he worked specifically in the Inspector General's shop, the IG shop. He was the most senior special agent for the Department of Energy, and he was talking to me about coming out and talking to Congress about what he knows within DOE and the files, the UAP files that they're holding on to. He was very upset, and he felt like he was a whistleblower. So I was arranging for this individual to actually meet with certain members of Congress. His wife, who is a doctor for the Veterans Affairs, walks in one evening after work and finds him dead on the sofa. Now, this was during COVID, but from my understanding, there was never any positive, if you will, connection between COVID and his death. He was relatively young. He wasn't an old guy. He wasn't particularly sick. He was healthy. He was athletic. So there are more individuals, and certainly I think the FBI should do exactly what they said they're going to do. You have folks like Anna Polina Luna that are working very hard behind the scenes, also trying to, you just had her on your show, that's trying to get some additional clarity into this. There was another individual that Dave Bruce used to work with. His call sign was Quake. And he was going to go public and talk to Congress. And unfortunately, he was in Washington, D.C. at a hotel, and they found him dead as well. So I want to be careful not to scare people, say this is all about UFOs and the conspiracy that they're trying to keep people like us quiet. But I can tell you, as a matter of fact, I myself and other individuals whom I know, and Congress can tell you the same, have actually been threatened before. So it is about time that the government takes this very, very seriously, whether they're just missing, they want to take an extended vacation, or they're dead. We need answers, and we need them now.
We got to know.
So yeah, a lot in there, and you know, listening to Lou and Chris Cuomo talk about that it's sobering, and it just all goes to tie this whole thing together. And I do agree with Lou that you don't want to draw too many conclusions, and you don't want to frighten people unnecessarily. But at the same time, you know, it's the same thing. Where there's smoke, there is fire, and there's certainly some fire here. There's too many coincidences with the people who worked in the same places and the kind of stuff that they're working on. You know, maybe if it doesn't have to do with UFOs or UAPs per se, or aliens or NHI, when you're talking about people working on anti-gravity, stuff that threatens to upend society as we know it, business as we know it, industry as we know it, travel as we know it, and they're taken out or driven insane. I mean, and that's the thing, is it may be something more subtle than murder. You know, you look at Paul Benowitz and all the shit that went down with him, and how they slowly but surely drove him insane. You know, is that what we're dealing with here? Did they do that to David Wilcock? Did they do that to Amy Eskridge? To a lot of these people, I don't know. But, you know, and there's my nephew-in-law, Ken. What's up, man? Ken, earlier I told you he's the biggest skeptic. Ken is actually a lizard man. So he's actually the real proof. If you want proof of NHI, it's Ken. It's a running joke that we've had. But yeah, to get back on this thing, I just don't know. I mean, it is very strange. I really hope that the FBI looks into this, that the government looks into this, that somebody looks into this a little bit more closely, because it is a very disturbing situation, and it's so hard to draw conclusions as to what's going on. But when I read the list of the scientists and kind of their ties and the synopsis of what they're doing, and you listen to what Lou says, and then you read about Matthew Sullivan and all this stuff, it is awfully hard to look at that and say there's no connection here. There's a connection. There's got to be a connection. I just don't know exactly what it is. Is it all because of UFOs? Is it something different? Are these people who are already susceptible, or are they already mentally compromised? I don't know, guys. I mean, I'm just here to kind of report the stuff and tie things together and let you know that it sure looks funny in some places. And I don't have all the answers. Obviously, nobody does. But it sure looks funny. It looks strange. And it certainly seems like there's something going on. And I'm not saying, and I think I said this to somebody the other day, I don't know. I don't think that this is all related, that it's all connected. But is there something going on? Yes. Is it something strange? Yes. Does it need to be looked into further? Absolutely. And that's about all we can say about the scientists. And I hope some of the ones who are missing are found, because that is very strange. Moving on, there is this does not, I mean, well, let me put it this way. Over on the chairshot.com and over there, we have been covering the show Invincible for several years now. This is the 4th season of Invincible. This past Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, was the season finale of season 4 of Invincible. And there's a scene at the end of Invincible, at the end of the season, that got a lot. When I watched it happen, it got a lot of people. I'll just say this: when I saw it and I saw the scene, and if you haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil it for you, but we've never been spoiler free over on Bandwagon Nerds, and we will be talking more about this on Bandwagon Nerds on the Chair Shot tomorrow morning. So tune in if you're an Invincible fan and you want to hear more, a detailed breakdown of the season finale and season 4 in general. Tune into the Chair Shot, the chairshot.com. It's the Chairshot Media's YouTube channel. We will be broadcasting live over there. I know I used to be doing it here on the Attitude of Aggression. We switched over there because it is a Chairshot show, and I really hope to get some, that they get some traction over there. But that notwithstanding, there's a scene at the end of the episode, and if I play the video, I'm sure that that's going to cause problems and get me a copyright something or other. But what I can do, or what I'm going to attempt to do, is I'm just going to play the audio, and it's going to have the Invisible logo over it. I'm just going to play the audio of this scene, and we're going to talk about it, because when it happened, I had this thought jumped into my head. Oh my God, is this what might have happened? And I thought, I'm so brilliant. I thought of this thing all on my own. And it turns out a lot of other people in the UFO community at the same time. Dan Zetterstrom was one of them. I read one of his posts. He had the same sort of thought, but I'm going to play the audio, and then we'll talk about this. So hopefully, I'm hoping this doesn't get me in too much trouble, but you know what? We're going to take a chance here and listen to this. And if you can find the video on YouTube if you really want to watch it, but just listen to this, and then we will talk.
You took our home, so our home is now here. Let me explain your future to you. We will live among you. Wear your clothes. Walk your streets. We will disappear within your society. Your people will never know we are here. But they will save us nonetheless, as we use them to birth our salvation. Any attempt to find us, to remove us, to thwart us, by you or the coalition of planets, will result in the death of billions and a less pleasant form of life for the survivors. Either way, we will rebuild our race. Your very existence proves this is possible. In return, I offer a truce. We will not influence, affect, aid, or endanger Earth in any way, as long as we are undisturbed. You do not have a choice, and yet you must still make one. Do you and your planet accept my terms, or do you choose annihilation for both our people?
Yeah. You do not have a choice, and yet you must still make one. What a fucking line. I mean, good God, that is one of the best lines, but that's not what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to talk about, what so many of us latched onto, is there's been so much talk and thought about, was an agreement reached between humanity and aliens at some point in time? Whatever happened at Holloman Air Force Base in 1964, if you believe that story, did it go down like that? Did the NHI give us an impossible choice? In what I didn't play there, and I will spoil this, is that Mark, who's the hero of Invincible, wrestles, and at first he's just righteously indignant, like, no way. After everything you've done, if you think for 1 minute I will let you live here amongst us, breed with us, rebuild yourself, get stronger at my expense. No, never. And then, but the episode's so great because the whole time Mark has these visions in his head of what these Viltrumites, which is the evil race of aliens, is going to do to all the people of Earth. And he has these visions in his head, and he sees all these people, blood and guts and everything everywhere. And then he sees the face of the woman he loves, Eve, and he relents and he says, my answer is yes. And as Thrag, who's the main emperor of the Viltrumites, goes away, Mark's just later saying, what have I done? The question that so many of us had was, is that comparable to what may have happened for real? If there were agreements reached, were we presented with this choice where somebody came to us and said, here's the deal. Here's your future. We will live amongst you. We will intermingle with you. We will breed with you. We will make hybrids of this whole situation. You don't have a choice, and yet you must make one. And, was the choice there is like, look, in exchange for this, we'll throw you some tech. We'll help you get ahead as long as you don't interfere with anything that we're doing. Or option B, you can choose to engage us. And yeah, we're far advanced, but we recognize that if, the whole world launches nukes at us all at the same time, it's going to destroy the planet and all of us along the way. Is that what you want? And did we make that choice? Did we make the same bargain that Mark makes here? And we say, I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. To preserve life as we know it, to preserve life on the planet, to preserve the planet in general. Did we relent? Did we make this sort of deal? I mean, a lot of people think that there was some friendly meeting somewhere in New Mexico or Arizona or someplace like that, where the aliens came down and said, hey guys, what's up? We're here. Let's talk turkey. Let's cut a deal. Let's bargain. I don't know if it was like that. And when I saw this scene, it jumped into my head immediately. And I know it jumped into Dan's head and it jumped into a lot of other people's head. Oh my God, is this art imitating life sort of situation? Did a similar sort of situation that we just listened to from Invincible, is that what may have happened? I don't know, but it's plausible. Is that a more plausible option, a more realistic option than warm and fuzzy aliens coming down and saying, hey, we're here, we want to work with you? Or were they really our oppressors here for an ulterior motive? Did they come from a planet where their numbers had been depleted? Did they come here and realize, hey, the human genetics is such that we can rebuild? You look at the trailers for Disclosure Day. There's all sorts of hybrids and stuff going on in that sort of thing, or at least we think they are. Is this all part of this whole disclosure movement? It's tough to say, but I mean, I just wanted to play that for you to get your mind thinking. Because like Ray was on earlier, and man, I dropped that bomb on him, and we were talking because we love Invincible so much, the series so much, and we'll talk about it more on Bandwagon Nerds tomorrow. But I threw this scenario out to Ray, and I could just tell the way that he responded, where he paused for a second, and it hit him like, son of a bitch, I didn't think about that. But Ray's been involved with Unidentified History. He did the Kenneth Arnold episode with us, and I know that some of the stuff I say gets in his head a little bit, and he starts thinking more about these things that you don't really think about too much. And I could tell that he paused for a minute and thought, shit, maybe. It's a great scene. It is one of the most powerful scenes, and it's such a good episode because they had fake you the whole way until the very end, where you realize these assholes are really here on Earth. By all means, like, my wife won't watch it because she doesn't dig animation. I absolutely love it. It is the best animated series of all time, in my opinion, and it just keeps getting better. Before we move into the last segment, where I want to talk about Nick Pope, we got some stuff coming up in the future on Unidentified History that, we got next week is UAP Con 2. I'll be attending that. That looks like it's going to be another good event. So we'll be covering that. I am going to try and get the episode on the ice wall of Antarctica out pretty soon because, talking about that with Ketty was on here earlier tonight. And, my wife, they're at Dewar's, which is our local ice cream store, and they're all streaming this. into ours. So I'm going to be a celebrity somewhere in town, or maybe not, but it's all good. Thank you guys. I hope I'm entertaining you with my talk, and make sure that Ken gets something that's lizard friendly at the restaurant. But like I said, I'll be going UAP Con 2. We'll be doing the episode on the Antarctic ice wall and talking about that. We will shortly thereafter get to Roswell, which is, of course, the big episode and probably the biggest one we've done. But I think before we ever get to Roswell, Contact in the Desert is coming up. I will be going to that. I'm going to be there for 3 days. They actually released a schedule. I think I've got my schedule worked out as to who I want to see and when and all that sort of stuff. And of course, they keep changing that around. But I will be there for 3 days. I'm very bummed that the stargazing tour for Friday night is sold out, which is like, man, like more than a month out from this whole thing. It's like, God. So I'm going to go and find my own place to stargaze. So anybody listening who's going to go to Contact, if you didn't get to the stargazing thing, lizard men like black and tans. That's right, Ken. You tell him, buddy. They do. But I'm going to try and find, there's all sorts of places out there in the desert to stargaze, literally right around the resort area. But I'll be doing that. I'm also going to probably bring this board game called SETI with me and see if I can't maybe get people together to try and play a game out there at Contact. But the lineup is fucking phenomenal. It is tremendous. It is every heavy hitter you could think of. And I think maybe that's why, one of the reasons why the stargazing sold out is because there's a lot more people, big heavy hitters involved this year. Also, I think they did it 2 nights last year, and they're only doing it on Friday night this year. But it's going to be a great event. If any of you guys are listening and you're going to be there, hey man, hit me up. I know you can't hit me up on X. I'm sorry about that. That's a bummer. Maybe I'll get it back by then. I'm still fighting with these guys. Or when I say fighting, it means trying to get somebody to actually look at the case, that sort of thing. So we got that going on. So that's kind of the future of Unidentified History. Attitude of Aggression on the Wrestling Podcast is coming back. Big Five Project, we're getting into 1997, the really good stuff of the Attitude Era. And then June, House of the Dragon comes back, and we may be doing something with Game Gone Wrong leading into House of the Dragon Season 3. Something I also going on that I haven't talked about are books. And I've finished a few books lately, like over the past few months. 2 of them by Leslie Kane. One of them is Surviving Death, her phenomenal book about, her research into the afterlife and that sort of thing. And I know Netflix had a series about that, which was good, but the book is so much better. There's so much more depth to the book. And it goes into so much more detail than anything on the Netflix series could have done. And of course, you did the other one, the original book, UFOs, Generals, and all this stuff. And they go on the record, and I don't remember the exact title of it, but that book was awesome because it predates the 2017 announcement in the New York Times. And you get to see all this stuff. And this is before anybody was really thinking that UFOs were, or before you got a verification or confirmation that UFOs were real, that sort of thing from the government. So they're still trying to make the case, and they're talking to the Iranian pilots and the pilots down in Peru or Chile or Colombia or all these other places. And just, it is a very compelling case history that is set forth in these books. It's really good. The other one, I think I was reading Trinity leading into our episode about Trinity. The book Trinity is good. Jacques Vallée and Paola Harris did a good job in that. But, Trinity is a problematic case for multiple reasons. The book is good. I think Jacques really, that's not a knock on Paola, but, Jacques kind of salvages that. And I did read Lou Elizono's Imminent, which I thought was excellent as well, especially for some of the stuff going on with the description. Like I think it's chapter 16, which I think everybody needs to read because it describes a lot about, the propulsion systems of the craft. And, beyond that, I'm reading a bunch of stuff. I think like Tom Thompson, I remember when I was on X and I was able to interact with Tom a lot more. He kind of has the same approach that I do. He's like reading 6 or 7 different books and all at once sort of thing. I know Pavel's reading like 3 at once, that sort of thing. I think this is just a thing that a lot of us do as we try to read multiple things at once. And I'm one of these people, I can't do the audiobooks. They don't sink in unless I'm driving or my concentration's focused on that. But read your books, folks. Very important. Some of the best stuff in there. is from that's Kayleen is my wife. She's being very chatty tonight, so that's good. Let me get to the last part of this episode before we cut out of here tonight. A big loss in the community took place a couple weeks ago with the passing of Nick Pope, and Nick was April 6th, he passed away at the age of 60. Nick had it was a brief but a brave battle with stage 4 esophageal cancer that had metastasized to his liver. I never met Nick in person. I was at, Ancient Aliens Live, right? This is back in, gosh, when was this? September? I think it was September of 2025. I went down to Anaheim for Ancient Aliens Live. And this is just a few months before Nick gets diagnosed. You would never have known at that point in time that anything was going on. I never met Nick. I interacted with him on X a few times. He was always very cool. He was always very cool to me. We joked around. We kind of joked around about people who drive around in cars with masks on, and we just couldn't quite understand why they were doing that. If you're one of those people, I don't mean to offend you. I just don't understand it. Like, I don't understand what you're protecting yourself from. You're the only one in the car. I mean, if there's someone else in the car, that's one thing. But if you're by yourself, what is going on here? But anyway, Nick and Nick had narrated a couple of documentaries that I've seen over on Amazon that I've got, and he was excellent in those documentary roles and just narrating things. Nick, as we know, he was often called the real life Fox Mulder because his career kind of mirrored the actual fictional X-Files lead. Because Nick would always point that his job at the Ministry of Defense was much more about paperwork and defense policy than chasing around monsters and that sort of thing. He was part of the Ministry of Defense from 1985 to 2006. He worked there for 21 years. He spent most of his time at the UFO desk. And he always said his job wasn't to find aliens, but to investigate sightings to see if they posed a national security threat. This is something we hear all the time. He, like so many others, right? And we heard J. Allen Hynek is probably the best known example of this, but Nick started the job as a skeptic, thought that every sighting had a logical explanation, but he reviewed classified files on cases, and Rendlesham was the one that really turned him around, and it kind of turned a lot of people around. He became convinced that a small percentage of cases were truly unexplainable and highly significant. He left the Ministry of Defense in 2006, moved to the States, became the premier insider voice for the phenomenon. He was the voice of reason, always widely respected. He rarely got into the wild conspiracy stuff. He treated UAPs as a serious defense and flight safety issue rather than it being purely paranormal. And that was always very important with Nick, is that he was trying to get people to look at this thing from the standpoint of, hey, there's something out there. We don't know what it is. It is a defense and flight safety risk. Let's get beyond the woo aspect of things and look at this thing clinically as to what it is, which is a real safety issue, a defense and flight safety issue. He was a staple on Ancient Aliens. I talked about that. Frequent commentator for major news outlets like the BBC and CNN. And he was a consultant on films like Battle Los Angeles. His final message, he was so open about his diagnosis in the final months. When he got diagnosed with it and people were saying, Nick, fight this thing. And he was just very matter of fact and pragmatic about the whole thing and said, I can't fight this. It had already metastasized to his liver. He knew it was over. And I think at Conscious Life Expo with Steve Bassett, it said that Nick was in hospice, and he hung in there for another month and a half. Elizabeth Weiss was his wife, his real life Agent Scully. In his final statement, Nick said he was not mournful for the things he won't get to do, but grateful for the amazing adventure his life had been. And I mean, he was so cool. The Mulder comparison, he was always consistent from his first interview in the early 90s to his final appearances earlier this year. His core message never changed. It was always, I don't know what they are, but they're real and we should be paying attention. And that is hugely important. And he was one of these people who he could transition from the nuts and bolts government world to the more speculative Ancient Aliens crowd. And he was able to keep his integrity intact on both sides. Even Stephen Greenstreet, who a lot of us know from the whole aspect of Super Debunker and stuff like that. When Nick passed away, even Steve posted something where he did a show with Nick Pope. He was very respectful for that. I appreciate that. Whatever your beliefs are, whatever Steven's beliefs are, there's a level of respect that Nick commanded that a lot of other people don't have, and he'll be sorely missed. And, you know, I'm going to close out the episode by playing for you a video that Ryan Sprague of Somewhere in the Skies put together that is tremendous. Before I do that, let me just say for those of you watching, because this will be pretty much where the episode or the live stream will close out. The actual episode will have this, and then of course the closing sort of music, that sort of stuff. Or actually, you know what? I think this will be where the episode, the real episode, closes out as well, because that's fitting and a fitting tribute to Nick. But for those of you who tuned in for this second part, and actually for the first part earlier today with all the for the S4 and the American Sasquatch review, thank you for doing that. I know there were some weird issues there. The dogs were not happy, although in the final episode you probably won't hear them at all. But I appreciate everybody who tuned in. If you tuned in, if you want to interact with me, check out the attitudeofaggression.com website. Check out the Attitude of Aggression's YouTube channel. That's where a lot of the action is going on. Over on Blue Sky, it's at Attitude Ag. I guess I will be, live streaming these on Facebook now. Hopefully we get the X account back one of these days. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it, man. Stick around. If you haven't seen Ryan's video tribute to Nick Pope, it's definitely worth watching. And with that being said, I'm going to cut out of here, and we're going to let this video play. Rest in peace, Nick Pope. That's for sure. I really hope that everybody enjoyed this episode. Again, my deepest apologies for getting split up the way it did. It just was the way things were going, and some, live stuff's always fun, especially when you run into technical issues. But thank you guys so much. We're going to come back. I'm going to play for you right now Ryan's tribute to Nick Pope. That's how we're going to come out of here. You guys stay safe out there. Keep looking under the skies. Keep looking at the seas. Who knows what you're going to see? We'll catch you next time for more unidentified history. Here is Somewhere in the Skies video tribute to Nick Pope. Rest in peace, Nick. You will be missed.
I was born in 1965 in London. Fairly unremarkable education. The real story of my life and what I did with it begins in 1985 when I joined the Ministry of Defence. And I was moved around from various different postings. Then in 1991, I was asked whether I would like to spend 3 years investigating UFOs for the government. So I said that sounded quite interesting, and I accepted.
The Ministry of Defence insider is about to talk publicly about the secret world of UFO sightings. Nick Pope spent 4 years as the MOD's UFO watcher. His book about his experiences, Open Skies, Closed Minds, is published next month. Nick Pope, what do you believe now that you didn't believe 5 years ago?
Well, I came into the job as a skeptic, but I was convinced by the sheer weight of evidence, the sightings, the radar evidence, all that sort of thing, that some of these things that we see in the sky and call UFOs are extraterrestrial in origin.
Extraterrestrial what? Craft with people inside them?
Well, craft of some sort, certainly. That's not to say they all are. Of course, most of them have conventional explanations, but after rigorous investigation, we find that 5 or 10% absolutely defy any conventional explanation. And these ones, yes, it does look as if they may be some sort of craft from elsewhere.
We asked Nick Pope, who used to investigate UFOs for the Ministry of Defence, what he thinks of this sensational video.
So this is one of the better fakes that I've seen. Looking at the skills of the filmmaker, I think it's a nice piece of work. It's well put together, and the black and white imagery is a nice touch because it plays into that whole idea that this might be something that's been in the government vaults for a while. Might even relate to Roswell, the holy grail of ufology.
Do governments know more about life on other planets than they tell us? Nick Pope used to work on UFOs for the Ministry of Defence and has written a book about it. Nick, simple, straightforward, first question. Is there life out there, yes or no?
Yes.
You believe that?
Absolutely.
Tell me why.
Well, scientists are beginning to come forward now, and for years they've been very, very conservative. But now cosmologists and biologists are beginning to put papers down saying, yes, the universe is probably teeming with life. And I think it's a short step to then say that that life could get here.
Are they little bubblegum green men with things coming out of their heads?
No, they're actually little grey men and women, one presumes, about 3.5 feet tall with very large insect-like eyes. They're quite spindly in appearance and appear to act like a hive society with very little individual self-will.
You're joking.
Absolutely not. These reports have been coming in independently from all around the world for years and years, long before all this was in the public domain. People are describing a very real phenomenon.
Nick Pope has become one of the most credible and well-known researchers on the issue of UFOs. He worked for many years studying the issue for the British Ministry of Defense, and I met up with him at his house in Tucson, Arizona.
The second and critical question is, do UAPs represent a possible threat to the defense of the realm? We could argue never shown a hostile intent. However, Russian aircraft attempting to penetrate the UK air defence region in the Cold War never showed hostile intent, but they certainly represented a threat. Thus, the only
if you show up and you don't do anything doesn't mean that you're not.
And this is it in a nutshell. Thus, the only logical conclusion that we can come to is that we do not know if UAPs represent a threat to the defence of the realm. And this is defence intelligence, science and technology.
Some sad news for us here at News Nation. A friend of the network who I had the pleasure of interviewing not too long ago, Nick Pope, has just passed away from cancer. You'll remember Nick as one of the most prominent voices on all things UFOs. His work on aerial phenomenon at Britain's Ministry of Defense led him to being known as the real-life Fox Mulder being the lead character in the hit show The X-Files. In one of his last emails to our producers, he said he'd be spending his remaining days with, quote, plenty of laughter, watching various British comedy shows with his beloved wife, Elizabeth. Elizabeth posting this evening on X saying she was lucky to have married Nick and that he was a wonderful husband. Nick, you will be missed by so many. Thank you for your positivity, all that you put into the world, and you will not be forgotten.
There will inevitably be unknown unknowns inextricably linked up with and part and parcel of the UFO phenomenon. So the UFO phenomenon may end up, firstly, being something that is solvable, but the solution may be something that we hadn't quite expected or completely perhaps hadn't expected. It may tell us something fundamentally new and different about the universe, and it may tell us something new about ourselves.